This is a CBC podcast.
The first woman to become a police chief in our province is officially hanging up her hat at the end of this month. Julia Cecchetto is retiring after serving as chief of Kentville Police Force for 4 years. Before that, she served with the Halifax Regional Police for 27 years. There have been a lot of changes in the role in policing over that time, and we have her on the line to talk about some of those changes. Good morning, Chief Cecchetto.
Good morning, Portia. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for taking our call this morning, and congratulations on your upcoming retirement.
Thank you very much.
How are you feeling about leaving the police force?
It feels a little bit scary, but it also feels right. So I go a lot with how it feels, and it felt like the timing was right. And
why is the timing right now?
I'm not sure. I judged, when I left Halifax and went to Kentville, I judged, if any of you have traveled to the valley, when you come over the hill and see the Blomidon, I used to have an incredible feeling of this was the right thing. And it started, 6 months ago or so when I came over that hill. I no longer felt that it was the right thing or that I wanted to do it. So I knew that it was time that I didn't.
So listening to your instinct on that, and instinct is a big part of policing, and there's been a lot of changes in the decades that you've been part of various police forces. What did you bring to the role of police chief in Kentville after your 27 years in Halifax?
Well, I think what I brought to Kentville was I was from outside. Number one, they hadn't had an outsider for quite a while, and I was obviously diverse. And I also brought the ability for the officers to be free to do the things that they felt were right for their community, because when I went there, I let them know that I, in fact, didn't know their community. I was learning their community, and that they did, and that they were the best people to do what they felt was needed in the town of Kentville. So, and then other than that, I made it my goal from my first day there that I was going to diversify the force, because when I went there had only been one female. I guess there had been two at some point, but one when I went there, and so that became my goal for the next 4 years. I was successful. I brought in 5 different women, although 3 did leave for bigger police forces, but that's okay. And just last year I was able to bring in an officer of Arabic descent. So I did have some success in that way.
Right. And what about other people of color? How have you tried to bring more in, perhaps, and still there's work to be done there?
There's a lot of work to be done there, and unfortunately I wasn't successful there. The Halifax is most generally successful in drawing African Nova Scotian candidates, and there was one young man who I had hoped I had sat with him at the APA graduation, but his hometown was New Glasgow, and so he went back to New Glasgow. So, and then I made an attempt to get a diverse candidate in our auxiliary program. So Kentville has an auxiliary program. And I tried to get somebody to come in and do it that way so they could volunteer and see what policing looked like on the inside. But again, I was unsuccessful. So,
have the challenges with recruiting changed even in the last couple of years, Chief Cecchetto?
Well, it's getting harder because, this hasn't been a great couple of years to be a police officer, to be honest. So, when young people are looking at a career, I think they look at it now and see, it used to be exciting, and, that was how they recruited, was look how exciting your day is. And if you watch a lot of the recruitment videos, that's exactly what they are. But with that now comes a lot of scrutiny about everything you do. So I think young people are looking now and saying, well, it might be exciting, but I'm not sure that it's worth it. So, yes.
Is the scrutiny useful and necessary, though?
Absolutely. It's policing does need to change. There's no question about it. We've done things the same way for many, many years, and actually, it's very interesting that the pandemic has made us look at the way we do things differently. So, for instance, this province has always had a very high rate of remands, and police were just fine with that. We felt that, well, if we're remanding them, they must need to be remanded. But with COVID and the closure of courts and the limiting of people coming into the correctional centers, we were forced to only put in certain people, and again, police were like, well, this just can't happen. But you know what? It worked, and nothing terrible happened. So in that way, it's been very good. It's made us see that, okay, the sky won't fall if we change the way we do things.
And what would you say are some of the other ways in which changes in policing could perhaps change the relationship you have with the public that you serve?
Well, I think certainly the defund the police movement, while really it's not about taking money away from agencies, because, for instance, Kentville really has no money to take away. The budget is pretty small as it is, but it has made police and other service groups look at working together. So I know in Kentville we were working closely with a couple of groups. There's a place called The Portal, and he's doing great work around youth and homelessness. And so we were working closely with him and being a partner agency and how we could best serve so that those youth aren't interacting with the police in the middle of the night. So I think that's where we need to go, is with those service groups stepping up and police supporting them.
And do you think the experience of a woman or a person of color coming into the force now would be significantly different than it was for you, just looking back at how your experiences have changed as a woman in policing over the last 30 years?
Oh, absolutely. So when I came in, I was, I actually had a very senior man tell me that my only role there was to do prostitution duty or search females. That would never happen now. And I can't really speak for big forces. I know when I was in Halifax, there was a lot of work done around anti-harassment. But in Kentville, for sure, the women that I brought in, because I could hear the layout of the department is such that I could hear the interactions out in what we call the bullpen. They are fully accepted by their peers, and there are no issues. And again, with my one culturally diverse person, there seem to be no issues with him. So I think policing has changed a lot. Not to say it's perfect, because I am sure it is not, and I'm sure there are things that I didn't see or didn't hear, but certainly what I saw, there was huge changes.
So you told our researcher about a night shift after a sergeant said something to you in the morning. Tell us what that was and whether you think that would be a thing of the past.
I would hope it would never happen. So I call it, my Oprah defining moment. And I had about 5 years on. And for that first 5 years, I just wanted to fit in. And I think that's a lot of what happens with young police officers. And I was young. I was only 21 when I came on. But I had come in after a 12-hour night shift, and I was tired, and I have never been a morning person. And my sergeant looked at me, and he said, "You're kind of cranky this morning. It must be your time of the month." And it was, I remember exactly where I was standing. I remember the people who were in the room. I remember everything about that moment, and it was the day that I decided that I was no longer going to take what really is harassment, sexual harassment actually, anymore. And from that day forward, I didn't. So please tell me that kind of thing isn't still happening. I certainly hope not.
Yes, hopefully not. Well, enjoy your sleep-ins. You have a lot of those to come, whatever you decide to do around the corner. Chief Chiketto, thanks very much for speaking with us about how things have changed and about your career, your experiences.
Thank you very much for having me.
All the best in retirement. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
That's Julie Chiketto, Nova Scotia's first female police chief there in Kentville. Her retirement date is October 1st.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.